Welcome back to the Budget Gamer channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at Alwa's Awakening. Now, if you may have taken a look at this one already, it's pretty clear that it is a pixelated platformer. But this one isn't exactly your typical Metroidvania, it's almost like a Zelda-inspired platformer. Being that the focus really isn't on combat, but kind of like those old Zelda dungeons where you'd have to problem solve your way all the way to the boss, the map on Alwa's Awakening is pretty much the same kind of thing. This also matches the overall story in Alwa's Awakening that Alwa was a peaceful village that was doing great until some evil wizardy overlord came in and unleashed his wizardy minions to pretty much destroy everything. They commandeered artifacts and enslaved the populace with hatred. And as we know from all early classic, especially N.E.S games, hate is bad, love is good. So it is now Zoe's duty as the main character in the game to collect the artifacts and destroy the wizard. Early in game, you come across a magical scepter that is pretty much going to be your weapon for the rest of the game. However, as you make your way through over 400 dungeon rooms, beating several bosses along the way, you will encounter objects that allow you to use magical powers through that scepter. Each magical power obtained, whether it is producing blocks that you can stand on or bubbles you can float on, will aid you little by little in reaching what were previously unreachable areas. As such, your progression through the gameplay and the game map will slowly expand, allowing you to replay previous levels, accessing new items, and reaching out even further. Likewise, as the game focuses very little on actual combat, the real intensity in the platforming elements comes from narrow jumps and tricky manipulation of those skills that you pick up. Though as save points in the game are set up more as checkpoints, where each time you die you respawn at the last place you saved, these tight navigation, especially the tight jumps that really force you to finesse the jump button, will many times with only one touch of a spike or an enemy send you vaulting all the way back to your previous save. And though some players really may not appreciate the fact that they have to start all the way over at the previous checkpoint just because of a hairy jump, others may actually appreciate the forced navigation of these longer areas as the learning curve of platformers in general. It's these areas specifically with hallways filled with spikes that'll kill you in one touch and slow-moving enemies that just make the navigation that much more difficult that actually made me reminisce back to the early Mega Man games. And again, but maybe just to me, Alwa's Awakening seems way more inspired by the early Mega Mans and early Zelda dungeon navigation classics than would really justify it to be compared to a Metroidvania. And as it was the development team's expressed goal to create a N.E.S game, not a pixel art tribute, it really does seem like they hit the nail on the head with that one. However, N.E.S games are a lot more than just 8-bit graphics and chippy music. And as such, some of the modern advances for some of the newer consoles or game styles is definitely left off in this one. If you really knew what you were doing and where you were going, I think you could probably speedrun this game in a couple hours, but the difference is, there really is no game prediction of where to go or what to do next. Similarly, the map really isn't that helpful. It does show you where you've been and identify certain main areas with how many objectives you may have needed to achieve, but as far as using a map for direction in this game, that's kind of a moot point. If you remember the map function from the early Pokemon Red and Blue games, the map really didn't tell you what was in a location, just that a location was where it was. And this is similarly accomplished in Alwa's Awakening. Now, whether this was done to draw out gameplay or just make this N.E.S game concept so much more realistic is up for grabs. But the back and forth navigation required to figure your own way through this map will make the game about 10 hours long. In addition to the magical powers collected through your gameplay, there are also certain collectibles. These collectibles will affect your gameplay in different ways, and though while not necessary to complete the game, will probably make your progress much easier. But those tighter platforming areas will always be a bit difficult. But the developers actually did include an assist mode which gives a little more data on the map and makes you respawn in the same room that you died. Overall, though, the controls are very solid and the music is really well suited to the game. Each type of area has its own type of background soundtrack, so while you're navigating your way back and forth through the dungeon, the music is always changing and it makes it really difficult to get bored. Along with solving dungeon puzzles, unlocking new abilities, and finding collectibles as you play through the game, despite the intentional nostalgia of creating a new N.E.S game, Alwa's Awakening actually is really entertaining and has a really unique feel. Though the really light story and the general difficulty in finding your way around the game is a bit of a drawback. However, if you are a die-hard classics fan, and especially if you were a fan of those early Zelda games, I'd really suggest you give Alwa's Awakening a try. Anyway, that about wraps up the review of Alwa's Awakening on the Switch. If you enjoyed the review or found it helpful, feel free to throw me a like or leave me a comment to show your support. And don't forget to click that little bell icon when you subscribe to stay updated with the latest content. These videos are coming out all the time, so there's always going to be some new indie to find. And if you think you might want to support the channel, feel free to check out our Patreon page. Anyway, this has been Budget Gamers, as always, thanks for watching.